I was going to say that I thought it was really insightful and prescient of Marty Scorsese to reference Good Will Hunting that wasn't going to come out for like 15 or 20 years when he made this film.
It's like how we say that we're hypoglycemic and dehydrated now instead of hungry and thirsty.
I'm always saying it.
Yeah, your favorite phrase. Welcome back, citizens of De Niro Nation, to Our Hero De Niro, the only podcast that is watching and recapping Robert De Niro's entire filmography in random order. I'm Mike, and with me as always is my co-host, Mike.
No relation.
And if you took a look at the episode title, then you already know that today we're joined by a special guest, our friend Andrew. Andrew, welcome to the pod. Yeah, longtime friend of the pod, frequent contributor,
longtime writer,
frequent letter sender, which we really do appreciate, and have always appreciated your insightful questions. How you feeling, Andrew? Are you ready to be on the podcast?
Oh yeah, and I just want to say thank you for being here.
I'm very happy to be here.
It's the kind of humor that plays everywhere.
And everywhere this podcast is being played.
That's right. In dozens of households around the world.
De Niro Nation.
That's right. De Niro Nation's really a state of mind. You know, it knows no physical boundary. But Andrew is here in town for the weekend visiting, staying at my co-host Mike's house, and we just had to have him on the pod. We saw it as a great opportunity.
Yeah, I'm having a lovely time. I love media analysis and movies and arguing, and those are all things that we're going to do a lot of.
Yeah, my co-host Mike's house is it's my favorite Tyler Perry film. So,
what is your favorite Tyler Perry film? Do you have one?
I'd have to look at the list. I honestly I can't think of one off the top of my head. What's your favorite Tyler Perry film?
I don't know any of the names of them. I know he plays Medea. I know he has a lot of films, but I can't think of the full names of any of them, and I keep confusing them in my head for the names of Ernest Films. You remember that character Ernest from 50 years ago?
Medea goes to jail.
Is that an actual Medea film? Trolls. Yeah, or is that just an Ernest film? Because that's what I thought in my head.
No, it's an Ernest film.
Goes to jail.
That might not be what it's called, though. But there, I think there is one where Medea goes to jail, but I don't remember. I mean,
it's possible. We have a prison industrial complex in
I was just about to say. I mean, it's the carceral state, right? Of course.
Today we're talking about the 1973 American crime drama film Mean Streets, directed by and co-written by Martin Scorsese. I'm pretty excited about this. I think we've been pretty lucky with our roles in a sense. The same way that after our first episode where we watched De Niro's very first role in Greetings, we rolled his most recent at the time film, Ezra. Here we are, luckily rolling the first Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro collaboration. So I think that's pretty exciting. We're gonna see more Scorsese really cool. films.
This was Scorsese's first movie, wasn't it?
No.
It was his first wholly original film.
First wholly original, okay. I was really glad that this was the one that I got to talk about, that it's actually, not to spoil anything, but a good movie that we have a lot to say about. You know, it'd be pretty funny if I were here for Rocky and Bullwinkle movie or something like that.
It's not his first wholly original film. I think it was his first film that he didn't make when he was in college or something like that.
I see.
Because there's this Who's That Knocking at My Door film that I think he must have made while he was he was probably in his master's program when he made this. And then there was this thing, Boxcar Bertha, which is an adaptation of another screenplay.
Yeah, this film was directed by Martin Scorsese and co-written by Scorsese and Mardik Martin, and starring Robert De Niro and Harvey Keitel. De Niro won the National Society of Film Critics and the New York Film Critics Circle Award for Best Supporting Actor for his role as Johnny Boy Savello. This film had a budget of $650,000 and made $3 million at the box office. It's notable for being the first of several collaborations between Scorsese and De Niro, and it was also Scorsese's first critical and commercial success. With that being said, I think we should get right into it because I know we're going to have a lot to say about this one. So, top billed, you have Robert De Niro. He plays Johnny Boy Savello. Harvey Keitel, a young, relatively speaking, I think he was 32, right, when this came out? Yeah, 32-year-old Harvey Keitel as Charlie. David Proval, notable for being Richie Aprile in The Sopranos much later, as Tony. Amy Robinson as Teresa. And I mean, there are a few other characters. I think the only one that kind of sticks out to me right now is Richard Romanus as Michael Longo.
I find Amy Robinson's performance as Teresa spellbinding. Did you know this is the only film she was ever in?
I did not know that. Some fun trivia.
I never heard of her.
Yeah,
so-
she was in like a couple of other. Well, that's why you've never heard of her, because this is the only movie she was ever in. She was in like a couple of other TV movies, and then eventually switched to producing and directing because she was frustrated that she wasn't getting picked for roles. So she's like a person who was, a filmmaker for her entire career, but I think she only acted in maybe 4 or 5 films total, and this was the only one that was like a real movie.
That's a shame because she gives a phenomenal performance.
Yeah, she's fantastic. Like I said, I find her
don't see why
spellbinding. I think she's
see why
incredible.
She wouldn't be picked up.
All right, let's get right into the movie, huh? It starts up with Harvey Keitel, 32-year-old Harvey Keitel, a.k.a. Charlie, waking up in the night, and we get our first of many needle drops. It's Be My Baby by the Ronettes. And we get some like handheld, old school, I think it was like 8mm camera footage over the title and credits, or under the title and credits. And it kind of reminded me of the Succession intro. That was kind of the modern parallel that I drew in my mind.
There's a little Wonder Years thing going on. I mean, obviously the Wonder Years came later.
It reminded me of home movies that I've seen of my family during that period of time, actually.
I like how it ties into the themes of the movie, that some of them are already really prominent. Obviously, Charlie is a very religious person, but also very morally flawed. We see that right away, based on what he says at the start. He's shaking hands with the priest. There's a lot going on.
Yep. And I think you can also already tell a lot. This is something that I really appreciated when I watched it the second time. You can tell a lot about Charlie's character beyond that, too. Like, he's like a peacemaker, right? He's like somebody who likes to get along with people. I think that at late in the film, there's a rant by Johnny where he calls him the politician. Everybody likes Charlie. And you can really feel that when you're watching that home movie footage at the beginning. Like, he's just glad handing around town. Like, he's just that kind of guy. The kind of guy who, to your point, is flawed and kind of tortured, but who's very charismatic and who everybody likes.
I don't think he was necessarily tortured. I think that, generally speaking, he was at peace with himself. He does the ostensibly immoral things he does because he can. But he thinks that I think that's part of the point of the movie as viewers. Do we agree or disagree? Is he a moral person or not? He seems to think that he is.
You think Charlie? Are you talking about Charlie or Johnny?
Yeah, Charlie. We haven't even
thought he was at peace
Johnny
with himself? Yeah, I know. I'm surprised to hear you say that. I don't agree with that interpretation.
Well, I think being tortured is like Charlie's entire character. Like that's like it is like I don't think it's like up for debate. I actually think you're directionally incorrect if you did not perceive him as a. I think that is like what he seemed to me, and also explicitly the way Harvey Keitel and Scorsese are trying to depict him. And just so you know, this character Charlie is a fictionalized version of Scorsese when he was this age.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean that is fair. I guess it depends on what you mean by tortured. Like, yeah, obviously he has decisions that he wants to make and choices that he's not able to make, and we'll get into that. But whether tortured in terms of whether he thinks he's a good or a bad person, I think underlying everything, he thinks he's a good person in that way. So he's like at peace with himself in that sense. That's the sense that I got.
Yeah, I really don't think so. But why don't we let Mike talk about the plot, and then we can discuss that. I mean, this is interesting, right? Because I have so much to say about this film, but it's hard to know when the right times will be to say those things. And so a lot, I think, will end up being discussed during the recap, just retrospectively. But yeah, why don't you get into the recap, Mike? Let's talk about the happenings of the film.
Yeah, Andrew, I think you were thinking of Charlie Bucket from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh yeah, he's at peace with himself. He's never sticking his hand in flames to physically hurt himself as a manifestation of the metaphorical ways he feels he deserves to be tortured.
That is what people who are content with themselves do recreationally, man. I do that every day of my life.
I'm gonna do it tonight. I'm gonna burn the fuck out of my hand while we're out tonight.
When there was that like raging flame in the kitchen, it was like, that's not supposed to happen in the kitchen, right? That was crazy. Like you would want to put that out right away.
I mean, I think workplace safety standards were a lot more lax 50 years ago than they are now. But I think that's just what burners are like on some industrial stoves. I think that's normal. I've never been in a restaurant kitchen circa 1972, though, so I couldn't really say.
It's all fair.
I think it was interesting, too, before we just get into the rest of the film. Fun piece of trivia. Don't know if you knew this. You mentioned this experience, getting to see like Little Italy through Scorsese's eyes. Originally, he was desperate to finance this film. And
glad you're mentioning
famous producer Roger Corman offered to produce it, but he wanted Scorsese to make all the roles black, like played by black people.
To be like a blaxploitation film.
Yeah, it was the early 70s. And he considered the option, but eventually a different an actress convinced him to shop it elsewhere, and he found a producer who would let him do it using Italian-American actors, which I think is interesting. I think it still would have been, I think it would have been almost as successful with black actors, but it's obviously very deeply personal subject matter to Scorsese. So I do wonder how, that alternate version would have played out. Just interesting to think about.
I have a fair bit to say, I think, about the race politics of this film. And I find that very interesting, actually, because I think that in his way, Scorsese is someone who I think for his career, and certainly De Niro is, has been troubled by the kind of racist attitudes of Italian American culture. I mean, these are not racist guys, right, as far as Italian Americans go. And so I find it interesting that the film it touches on the racial dynamics between blacks and Italian Americans in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, both textually, but then to your observation, Mike, subtextually, there's the observation that Scorsese thought this would work as a film about black people, which I agree with you, it would have, which I think adds another layer to the race politics of the film.
Yeah, I don't think you would have to change that much. Obviously, there's some cultural artifacts and stuff like that, but the plot would be the same.
So we're 5 seconds into the film, and there's a nighttime. I'm calling it a carnival in my notes. I think they refer to it as a feast, but it seems to be some sort of
like some kind of festival or a parade
some sort
or
of
something. Yep.
And at this carnival or festival or whatever you want to call it, we see a man shooting up in the bathroom, and there's an altercation, and a guy is dragged out through the bar. We're getting introduced to one of the major settings of this film, which is Tony's bar. I really like the way the bar is shot, and I think it's going to play into our final kind of analysis here thematically and everything.
I think that cinematography, as we've discussed, is something that I often struggle, I think, to notice. But I think that the dark reddish kind of lighting and coloring of the bar when it's being shot is pretty clearly meant to evoke hell, right? So this is a representation of Charlie's feelings of conflict over the things that he does and the things that he's a part of that he feels are sinful, which is certainly something worth unpacking, I think, at some point in this discussion, because it's interesting what of Charlie's conduct he seems to take issue with in his torturedness and what he doesn't seem to take issue with. But certainly he takes issue and feels a lot of guilt for the time he spends in the bar, especially for the ways it makes him interact with women.
Yeah, I also noticed the red tinting, and I appreciated that as well. I think it's also not really unrealistic.
No, not at all.
I've been in bars that kind of look like that, yeah. But at the same time, very clearly, specifically done to look that way. I didn't get the hell interpretation that you did, although it does make sense. But, it's almost like that it's a separate place from the rest of the world. It's like a fantasy realm.
Yes. Yeah, it's like a basement bar. There are no windows, obviously, to the outside, and it is shot with this, very deep red lighting. So I thought of Purgatory, but same kind of track as what Mike thought.
It's kind of like a strip club.
Yes, I do want to take this moment to acknowledge something about the way this film is shot. Scorsese does this a lot in his filmography, but it felt to me really especially pronounced in this film compared with later Scorsese films. It's very expressionist in nature, right? We see a lot about the ways that scenes are shot that add color to the to the context of what's happening, and we see our first version of this in this scene. I think you're about to talk about it. Charlie saunters into the bar, and the camera kind of follows him, and you never see his face, but you see the way he's glad handing, and you see kind of the swagger that he has in this part of the world. And it tells you a lot about the way he sees himself, because you're kind of seeing this from over his shoulder, or kind of from his vantage point. There are a lot of shots like this that are very effective at bolstering the story, and the nature of the bar is a big part of that expressionist style of the film.
What do you think expressionist means?
It means meant to evoke more than the text. So, a shot being from a low angle is expressionist because it suggests dominance, as Plinkett says in the Star Wars Episode 1 review about the Star Destroyer. That is expressionist cinematography.
Okay. I mean, I know about expressionist artwork, but I think that's something different.
No, it's the same thing.
Cinematography.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Expressionism is like a interpretation of reality, I thought.
Yes,
Yes,
through the visual
we're saying the
style
same
of the
things.
film.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. It is like a non-wholly naturalistic interpretation of reality. Like it's like the shot has. There is something about the way the art is done, the way the shot is composed, the way the camera moves, that is like not a wholly literal interpretation of reality, but is like adding something to it, like adding more context.
Yeah, but it's also about like the beauty of the mundane.
Expressionism can be about a lot of things, Andrew. It can be about the beauty of the mundane, but it can also be about the horror of the mundane. This film is about both of those things.
That's true. Film tends to evoke that more than like still art.
Yes, certainly.
So it's morning, and there's very intense lighting here, very harsh. The morning after Charlie was at the bar, and we see a CD
Hold on.
transfer. What?
There's more to say about this scene. It's incredible. You just skipped a tremendous amount of critical detail.
I don't.
So let
think I
me
did.
describe what happens in this scene. So we're in the bar. Charlie walks in, and so we're going to be introduced to some important characters in the film. We are introduced in this scene to Diane, played by Jeannie Bell. She is the black dancer on the stage, whom Charlie harbors a crush for, but he has a lot of guilt over that crush, not only because he has guilt about his repressed sexual feelings, but also because she's black. And he says this in his thought narration. This is the first kind of, I think, like statement of the race politics that Scorsese wants to explore in this story. He's thinking to himself about how beautiful he thinks Diane is, and observes that he can't do anything about it because she's black. But
He
that's
literally
not really all that-
says, but she's black.
Right. He says, but she's black, but that doesn't really make a difference, does it? Or something to that effect. Like he's like, that doesn't really make her all that different from me, and that I think is essentially Scorsese's thesis. Like he's kind of having Charlie say it in his internal monologue. So we get that. But this is also the scene where we meet Johnny, isn't it?
No.
Yeah.
Or is that the next time they're in the bar? No, it is. This is all the same scene. So much happens in
Johnny
this first
isn't
bar
in the
scene.
first scene.
No, he comes in. It's the
He comes
same-
into the bar.
It's a long
Yep.
scene. He comes in later.
It's a very long scene.
You
Yeah.
could consider it two scenes, sort of. Or like when Johnny comes in, it's the new scene, but it's the same setting. I don't know.
The thing happened that I just described, right? So Charlie walks into the bar. We see the shot that I described behind him where it kind of establishes his character and the role he plays in the bar and in the community. Michael comes in. Michael is the loan shark, to whom a sizable sum of money is owed by Johnny, which is kind of like the central drama and tension of the film. Michael has a conversation with Charlie where he shares that Johnny has missed a payment and he suspects he may be ducking him. And he brings him cartons of cigarettes, and we kind of establish the dynamic between Michael and Charlie, which is that they're both relatively unimportant mobsters, but I think we're supposed to understand that Charlie is a little bit more ingrained in the hierarchy and senior in the hierarchy than Michael is. And we meet Johnny for the first time in this scene. Like we actually meet him. He has his first dialogue. It's a very long scene. It's probably 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
A lot of things happen.
I also,
Okay.
I mean, we skipped over like a whole bunch of scenes, which I
No, we
assume was
didn't.
intentional, that we introduced everyone. Well, like we skipped over Michael's introduction. We skipped over Charlie in the church. Michael's introduction, I think, is a little bit relevant because it establishes him as kind of like a wannabe failed gangster.
It's true.
And that's really his
With the
character in the
adapters.
movie. Yeah.
Let's
with
let
the
Mike
adapter. He
get back
doesn't
to the
know what he's
recap
doing.
the way that he wants to tell
Yeah.
it. It's all going to be fine.
Yeah.
De Niro comes into the bar after the scene that I started to describe, like after the transfer of the lens adapters.
Yes.
Oh, is that interstitial?
Yes.
All right, well, continue. Yeah.
Let's just back up a little bit. It's morning. There's intense lighting, and we see a seedy deal occurring under a bridge in the early 70s. They were supposed to be lenses, but they're actually lens adapters. So it's like a totally worthless purchase of a ton of boxes of these things.
And they fell off a truck, as it were.
Exactly. Yes. And the guy who made the purchase is Michael, to the point that you made 5 minutes ago when you were describing a later scene, that he's like a wannabe kind of like gangster who's not very good at it. Then at 5 minutes and 30 seconds, we get our first De Niro face reveal, or sighting, I should say. I put 5:30-ish. I don't know if you guys take issue with that.
I had 5:22, so that's close enough.
You know, to each their own. We all read numbers differently.
Neither of these are the first De Niro sighting if you count his appearances in the archival footage, which
Yeah,
I
but we
believe is
couldn't,
at 242.
We couldn't
Yeah.
tell it was him, remember?
Well, maybe you couldn't.
Yeah, Michael and I were struggling with that.
Yeah, I mean, I chose to select the first time that he's actually doing something on screen. But yes, 242, 522, 530, whatever. And our first actual introduction to the character of Johnny Boy, as played by the legendary Robert De Niro. We see him, he's a rascal. He's a miscreant. He drops a bomb in a mailbox and then runs away as it explodes. This is interspersed with footage of Harvey Keitel, Charlie, entering a church. Charlie, who is there explicitly, we learn through narration, which is used infrequently throughout the film, Charlie's narration, that he wants to do his own penance for his own sins. And he monologues for a while, and he literally talks about his soul being in pain as we see footage of the bar operating.
He's at peace with himself.
He's content with himself.
He says, "Don't fuck around with the infinite," which is very funny
Yes.
because he clearly seems to do that all the time.
Some of this narration is not by Harvey Keitel. It's actually by Scorsese himself. I think the narration by Scorsese is supposed to be like memories Charlie has of things a priest said to him. That's the general interpretation that I read online when I was reading what folks had to say about this film. I did not perceive that when I was watching it.
So after this church footage, after going to church in the middle of the night, Keitel enters the bar and meets with Tony, the owner. He starts dancing with the dancers, and now we're synced up with Mike and his fucking Rochambeau goddamn description of the plot of this film, which is already so thin. Let's make it extra confusing. We get the narration that he's attracted to Diane, the black dancer. I found the appearance of young Harvey Keitel slightly unnerving because I've only ever seen him as a middle-aged or old man. But he looks the same. He just has brown hair. It's weird. He has like a 45-year-old's face on a 32-year-old's body in the early 70s.
He is 5 years older than De Niro also, so it's believable that he has kind of like an older sibling role, even though
I think they're supposed to be the same age. Yeah.
You think so? I didn't find it that way.
I think that Charlie is supposed to be in his late 20s. I don't think that he's supposed to be 32. These are men who are early in their life. They are immature. Charlie is obviously smart and hardworking. If he keeps going, he will be a successful mobster. But he's too underdeveloped to be in his 30s. He's still very early in his career. He's a low-level man.
Mm-hmm. He's green.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he's still very green.
And we're also introduced in this scene to Michael, who is concerned that a certain kid, who we'll learn pretty soon is Robert De Niro, might not pay his debts. And then a fight breaks out behind them. This is the first of many fights that occur in this bar. I think it would be a very difficult bar to, you wouldn't want to go there with your buds and like have a drink after work.
Well, the bouncer was doing a bad job. That's why Tony castigated him right at the start.
But
There
there's
you
a
go.
lot of, I think, like ambient setting types of this violence. We'll talk about it, I think, several times throughout the film. And I think this is just one of those things, right? It's supposed to convey to the viewer just what a nonchalantly chaotic and violent world this is, right? Like there's fights breaking out, there's murders, and I think implied rapes that are not a part of the story of the film. It's just set dressing basically for like the violence of kind of lower middle class New York in the early 70s.
The one thing I was going to say is that clearly Michael does not approve of Charlie's relationship with Johnny Boy.
No one does.
He's not happy about that.
And
well, I know
it's
that no one does,
yep.
but Michael specifically says it in the scene.
For
We're
what
just
it's
talking to
worth,
Charlie.
they're all right to feel that way, and we'll get into that.
It's the wisdom of the crowd, man. So Johnny Boy walks in and he has like two women on his arms and he's acting like kind of a big shot. He's kind of peacocking, as it were, which is a term that did not exist back then in the 70s. And he tries buying drinks for everyone, but Charlie stops him and talks to him and questions him about all the fucking money that he owes Michael, because now that he's been made aware of this problem. So De Niro replies with a very long story, the kind of long story that someone tells you and they're like making up bullshit asking for money. You know, it's like that kind of story.
It's like a check is in the mail situation.
I read online that this was improvised. Did you read that?
Oh, that's cool.
No, although I did read that a lot of Johnny's dialogue was improvised on set by De Niro, which is super cool.
Yeah, this is one of those things. Like, yeah, a lot of it was. I also want to ask in this moment, did this movie make you guys laugh?
Yes.
Yes.
I laughed more during this movie by at least an order of magnitude than any other film that we have watched for this podcast. I think this is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen in my life. I was laughing for like the entire first half, especially the character of Johnny and especially the way De Niro does the performance. It's like fascinating. This is proto like De Niro comedy. He's so funny. He is so funny in this role. It is a tremendously funny character.
I do want to say, I think this really shows Robert De Niro's range. You think of him as an actor. I mean, obviously, he's been a comedic actor, Meet the Parents and all of that, but he's often showing a lot of gravitas. He plays very serious characters a lot of the time, and he's able to play this character who clearly doesn't take anything seriously, doesn't take life seriously, doesn't respect anything. He does that so well immediately. It showcases Robert De Niro's skill as an actor.
Yeah, I feel like over the course of the podcast up until this point, we've really learned that he has those comedy chops, but I'm impressed that he also has the ability to improvise like that. It really, it's very impressive because he clearly has a deep understanding of Johnny Boy's psychology. You know, what makes this guy tick, who's really kind of a chaos agent in a lot of ways. So I think that it seems like a very difficult thing to have to do as an actor.
I agree. Yep. This is an almost unbelievable Robert De Niro performance to me. I think there's a very strong case to be made that this is not only the best we've seen on the podcast, but by far the best we've seen on the podcast so far. It's pretty towering.
It's proto Taxi Driver in a way.
Yes,
it's certainly not exactly the same, but in terms of, obviously this is someone who was mentally unwell.
Yep.
And we're going to see more of that going forward in the recap.
Yeah, and in Taxi Driver, presumably, but I haven't seen that film yet, so don't spoil it.
I haven't seen it either. I just know about it.
Oh, okay.
I've seen it, and this observation is accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I figured it was.
For the pod. Yep.
Same. And the last thing I'll say about this scene is that Charlie and Johnny, they go out back of the bar, and Michael confronts Johnny. But it's a quiet yet intense confrontation. So he's a little steamed about the fact that Johnny owes him money that he's in for quite a bit.
Yes. And you can see in this moment, we start to see, I agree generally with Andrew, his postulation that this is not a movie that is about the plot, right? This is a movie that's about the characters and about the relationships between the characters. And we learn a lot about the relationship that Johnny and Charlie have, which is that they obviously love each other, right? Like, this is probably the closest Johnny comes to showing any love for any other person in the movie, given that he's like an uncaring chaos agent who cares about nothing and no one around him. And Charlie obviously really loves Johnny. And there's a lot of very easy camaraderie between the two of them. And you can see, especially in the confrontation between Johnny and Michael, how concerned Charlie is that this is simmering, and his like very strong desire to be, as I alluded to when we were talking about the archival footage, the peacemaker. He just wants everybody to get along. That's like his strongest motivating kind of orientation, I think, as a character.
I have a little bit of a different interpretation. I view Johnny Boy as being somewhat of a psychopathic character. I don't know if he's capable of loving that way. He just uses people in the way that they will allow him to use them. And
everybody loves people in their way.
Well,
that's his way.
Okay. What, that he uses them? At any rate,
sure.
I think Harvey Keitel also, a lot of the basis for their relationship is, as you mentioned, he's tortured. He wants to make his own penance. And his version of doing that, obviously, is trying to take care of Johnny Boy.
Yes. That is explicit. I think we should try to make observations that are more implicit, right? So we see the two ways that Charlie tries to do penance throughout the film, right? One is, as we joked earlier in the in the pod, holding his hand in flames and risking burning himself, in lighters and burners in the kitchen of the restaurant that he's ostensibly going to take over. But he also does his penance by caring for Johnny, right? Who at every turn tries to destroy his life. And so those are kind of the two ways that he manifests his version of penance for his sins.
Right.
This is great discussion about Johnny Boy, but we're going to stick with Charlie in this next scene. He visits a large empty restaurant, which apparently is open. At first I thought, oh, he's going after hours, but no, this place isn't doing well. And he has a conversation with the owner. So he basically it's like some flavoring. You know, we get to learn a little bit more about the character of Charlie. He reports his uncle, Mario, runs the mob. And so he's like a low-level gangbanger who works for his uncle. So he's there to collect, what do they call it? Protection money?
Yes. And I think that the character of Mario, his uncle, is supposed to be mid-level, actually.
Mid-level? Okay.
Yeah, he's
like
a
the
capo
regional
or
manager.
something like that. Yeah.
He's the district manager.
He's not the head of the mob. He's mid-level, but he's a made man, I think.
I thought Giovanni was the uncle.
Oh, it is probably Giovanni, yeah, because he has a last name. It is, yeah, sorry, it's Giovanni.
Giovanni is the uncle.
Kappa. Yep. Mario is the restaurant owner. Correct.
Yes.
Thanks, Andrew. Yep.
Yeah.
Great correction. I love that. We just have like the CNN style live fact checking happening during this episode.
You get some chyrons on this pod.
So after that conversation, Keitel, Charlie, he walks back through that, whatever you want to call it. I did actually refer to it as a parade here. So parade, festival, whatever. And I made note of another one of Scorsese's cinematographic techniques that he uses a lot in this film. There's a lot of handheld camera shots, which is quite obvious, very overt. And it's very interesting.
I'm sorry, I missed something that I wanted to say. There's another great expressionist shot during this first scene of Charlie that we see between him and his uncle that I'm not sure that I really understand, but I'm confident it has to be intentional. It's a shot reverse shot conversation between the two of them. And when we see the shots of Charlie looking at his uncle, they're blurred. And when we see the shots of his uncle looking at him, they're very clear. And I think that's interesting because I think that what it's meant to imply is that Charlie's uncle understands something about him to a greater extent than he understands about his uncle. I find that a little bit muddy thematically because while I'm sure that's true from like an overall perspective, Charlie's uncle does not know how involved he is with Johnny and Teresa. So in a more literal sense, the kind of information asymmetry between them goes in the other direction. But there's a very notable cinematographic distinction between those shot reverse shots in that conversation.
So I think that I thought the part of the point was, and I like Giovanni's character. He was supposed to be kind of an all-powerful, mafia don, almost a divine kind of figure. I thought that he really did ultimately know and understand everything that was going on. Like,
it's possible.
Maybe not the details, but he's that street smart or whatever you want to call it, that he could understand all the events.
That's a fair interpretation that maybe he does actually know how involved Charlie is with Johnny and Teresa, which is why he continues to emphasize that he doesn't approve of it, not because he's just cautioning him, but because that's his subtle way of reminding him, like, hey, I don't think this way you're behaving is very smart.
Yes. That was my interpretation. Yeah.
That's a good interpretation. Yeah, I think I can co-sign that.
I do want to say this is the moment in the movie where I noticed what your lovely wife Caroline said about Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro. And I think this is kind of an emergent thing. Robert De Niro has a prominent mole on his right cheek. Harvey Keitel has a prominent mole on his left cheek. And it's kind of a yin and yang thing. And Charlie and Johnny Boy are good foils of each other. Charlie obviously takes life very seriously in some ways, although he is a tortured man. Johnny Boy doesn't take anything seriously at all. So great opposites. So, but even manifesting in that physical way, I found it was very interesting.
Yep.
I think that's just how their faces look, man.
I said it was an emergent thing. Yeah.
No, I'm just fucking with you. So we see Keitel walk back through that festival or parade or whatever you want to call it.
It's worth observing here, right? Andrew has made the observation that this is not a film about the plot, and I agree. And I also agree that this is a film about the characters and the relationships between them. I think the other thing that this film is about, though, is about feelings and about evoking emotion. And I think that the relatively constant, as we come into these later parts of the film use of handheld cam, it helps to kind of do that. Like what Scorsese is trying to do is to make everything very fluid. It's all very in motion. It feels like you are experiencing these things that the characters are experiencing in a way that is like it's almost transcendent filmmaking. Like I can't think of many films that I've seen that do this, that evoke emotion in as effective a manner as this film does. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult for me to say. I agree with your point, and I got some of that, but I was also kind of studying this movie academically for the pod. I was pausing and rewinding a bit, so I think if I had watched the movie, naturally I would have experienced that more.
Yeah, you were kind of playing it like a DJ, just like kind of scratching the record, kind of like backing it up.
Exactly.
Yeah, all I wanted to say about the use of handheld camera shots, I agree with what Mike said and his interpretation. I think Scorsese's use of handheld camera shots is incredibly effective, and it does a really great job of highlighting the characters' psychological instability, and especially for Charlie, the inner turmoil that he's facing. And it's really cool too, because he does some of these almost like first person handheld shots. They're very close. They're very tight in on the characters. And I think it also adds this really cool layer of documentary style, like grit and realism. Mm-hmm. And you really feel like you're in that world, which is great because, those shots are often deployed at some of the most chaotic moments that occur in our characters' lives.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Michael conducts a drug deal, and they have they call it a system. It seems more like a scam, but basically Michael and whoever he's with steal some money from some young kids who wanted to buy some drugs. So basically with the kids kind of stiff the dealers, because the dealers, Michael and his buddy, whatever, his partner, they said like, oh, we can't let you know where the drugs actually are. So you give us the money. We take a half-hour trip in the car and we come back with the drugs. So while they're driving, they realize that the kids like shorted them a little bit, but they were never actually going to get drugs. It was like a con on their part. So they just had some money to go drinking. So they decided to go to the bar, which we never learned the name of.
They go to
right?
the
It's
movies,
just the bar.
Actually. Yeah, the movies.
They go to the
Charlie,
movies.
come here.
Yep.
They
go
go
to the movies.
They go to the bar to pick Keitel up. Keitel is walking out of the bar, and the three of them go to the movies.
They're always going to the movies.
Yeah, they're always getting into fights. They're always going to the movies. And they're always going to the bar. So let me say when they're going to the bar, God damn it. Now they're at the movies. Anyways, I have nothing to say about the movie scene. Do you guys?
Not really. But leading up to it, I found the stiffing of the kids interesting. It's like, I guess they are supposed to be mobsters, but clearly they're not really established yet. They're doing these very low risk, low reward operations. And I think they think that they're like real gangsters, even though they're clearly not that way at all. Like, think about Gio and his character and his gravitas. Like, he's a real mob boss who knows what's going on, and they're like wannabes.
Yeah, Michael is a younger man, just like Charlie and Johnny Boy. And so I think we're just establishing that he's a bit of a wannabe.
Right. They're peers. The principal characters are all peers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Presumably who all grew up together, I think is the implication. They've known each other since they were kids.
So it's after the movies, it's morning, and Johnny and Charlie, they're driving in the car. So in the car right now, it's Charlie, Johnny, and Tony.
So Charlie is out doing his job, right? So let's talk about what Charlie's job is. So Charlie has two things that he does for his uncle. One thing is what is called running numbers. So illegal gambling rackets, in the kind of 50s, probably through the 70s or 80s, were, these sports betting operations that the mob would run because that type of sports gambling was illegal. And so part of what Charlie is depicted as doing is taking the bets and like collecting what is owed and distributing winnings to people who are participating in these gambling arrangements. The other thing we see him doing for his uncle, which is what's happening in this scene, is doing collections of, as Mike referenced earlier, protection money from other businesses in the neighborhood. And so they are going to collect from this other bar proprietor. And so Mike's going to describe what happened. But I think we're supposed to understand from this scene, that this is an area where, Charlie's decision to associate with Johnny is spilling over into his professional life in a way that is making him less effective. Because as Mike is about to describe, Johnny acting a fool makes what should be a totally harmonious and normal transaction go horribly wrong for Charlie and his friends.
I also want to mention that my limited understanding of the mob operations and stuff is that the running numbers and those kinds of duties, they're very, very low level duties. So clearly these are,
entry level
they think
shit.
they're gangsters, but yeah, they're doing entry level shit.
Yeah. So Charlie, Johnny, and Tony, They're riding in the car and they go to this bar, operated by some other guy and his crew, his friends, to collect on them. And it's pretty cordial. They all seem cool with each other. They're playing pool.
They're going to have a drink together, while the collection's happening.
Exactly.
Business as usual. Yep.
Exactly. It's just like mob business, But De Niro, Johnny Boy, starts acting a fool and he starts running his mouth. And what he does is he starts calling.
What he says really is so funny. It made me laugh.
The guy, there is comedy in this film. Johnny Boy is a very funny character.
Oh, yeah.
But he calls the guy who owes the money, who's kind of like running that crew, he calls him a mook. And then he just keeps calling him a mook, and like everyone mooks, and a huge brawl breaks out in the bar.
No, the thing that made me laugh was actually what incited the mook exchange, which is the music is loud. And so Johnny Boy says, hey, can you turn the music down? And there's two girls who look totally normal standing over by the jukebox. And the bar proprietor, the fat guy, says, oh,
Joey.
no, the girls like the music loud. Joey. Oh, no, the girls like the music loud. And Johnny turns around and totally for no reason. Like, this is so mean for no reason. He says, those skanks, those aren't girls. And it's like they're just like standing there. They look totally normal and respectable just listening to music. And it's like it really tells you about his character, right? Like, he's a guy who just likes to stir up shit for no fucking reason. Like, he had no reason to say that about these women who are presumably regulars at the bar who know these people who they're transacting business with.
Yeah, and clearly he doesn't respect women. I mean, earlier in the first scene when he walks in the bar, he has the two women. He's like a wannabe playboy kind of person as well. He doesn't respect anything.
Correct.
Yeah, that's great insight, guys. So this fight breaks out. It's a big old brawl, and apparently it's so loud in the basement of this here bar that the cops swiftly arrive. And so we kind of hard cut to all the guys who are involved in the brawl from the two gangs, whatever, in a line. And they're being patted down by these two beat cops. And unfortunately, Charlie has a small penknife on him.
I think it was the fat bar proprietor, Joey, actually, who had the penknife.
No, Charlie had
one.
No, Joey didn't want the cops to be involved. Nobody wants the cops
Joey's the
involved.
one who does the deal with the cop, who gives him the bribe money to not be charged with the knife.
Yes, but it's on Charlie's behalf.
I didn't get that, but sure, whatever.
Yeah, it was Charlie. Charlie had the knife. He had the knife, and Joey, he tries to bribe. He bribes the police officers basically to have them ignore the knife situation. So they're just kind of reconcile.
Air quotes.
Cab fare. Exactly,
I did laugh at. This was one of the scenes where I laughed out loud when the cop says Jersey and he gives him some money, and then the cop says Philadelphia. He gives him more
money. Yep.
Yeah, that's good. That's good comedy.
Yeah. I love this scene. I also think this scene is in addition to kind of showing you what monster Johnny is, in terms of the chaos agent that he acts as part of his relationships. We also see the way the guys fight, and it's very ineffectual, right? It feels like none of these guys know how to fight, and I think that's intentional. And so I think this scene is also supposed to show you this fight's not serious. This violence isn't serious. These men are not serious, right? These are kids who are pretending to be tough. But even when they get into this fight, no one's actually getting hurt. It's just they're just a bunch of kids roughing each other up, basically, like they're playing on the playground.
Yeah.
There's also a moment, too, which is not very important to the plot, but they go into another room, and it was Tony, right, who reveals that he's purchased some unlicensed tigers. And they're just, they're correct. Caged. Yep. They're caged. And so he has everyone kind of oohing and awing, looking at them. And then he gets into a cage with one, and it looks like a real tiger to me.
I thought they were lions.
It's lion. Yeah. They're lion really? Cubs.
That's crazy.
It's a lion whose mane has not grown yet. So it's like a child lion.
Yeah, it's a lion cub.
Yeah.
Do they say lions?
Yes.
Well, no, but they talk about tigers.
I wish I could get a tiger. No.
Oh.
Tony says he wants a tiger. And my understanding was he's implying he had to accept a lion, basically.
And they talk about the William Blake poem, Tiger, Tiger.
Okay.
That's why I was the readers. I thought that they were they thought that the Gen Pop wouldn't know the difference between a lion and a tiger, so they were just calling it a tiger in the movie, even though all they could get was a lion. It was like the gang that couldn't shoot straight situation.
De Niro Nation, write in and tell us what your interpretation of this debate is.
I also say that I thought that this was a real Chekhov's gun situation. The tigers, lions, the big cats are never relevant. They only matter in this scene.
Yes.
Right. I thought was interesting.
Caroline observed, right? Like, let's give Caroline some credit when she made good observations. She observed that this is a very Coen Brothers-esque film, and this is the kind of thing she's talking about, right? Like something the Coen Brothers do in their films, and Scorsese does this as well, but never as dramatically as he does in this film. There are a lot of loose ends in this film, and the way there are loose ends is naturalistic in and of itself. Like, it's like generally, like, we think about Chekhov's gun as a like literary construction, as a part of like understanding narrative symmetry, right? But this is not a film that has narrative symmetry. Nothing is symmetrical. There are like 10 different things that happen throughout the film that seem like they could be important, but never ultimately are. And like, that's part of its naturalism, because that's what real life is like. Like, there are no Chekhov's guns in real life, right? Like, you see guns all the time and they're not going to go off. And so I think that's part of like the type of story that Scorsese is telling, which, to your point, Andrew, isn't about the story. The events don't matter.
It's like, I know this has a negative connotation, but it's a Shaggy Dog story.
Yes, correct. But it's not meant pejoratively. But yes, this very much is a Shaggy Dog story. I agree.
I also just want to point out in this scene and in some earlier scenes as well, Tony was tending to his hand. Johnny Boy, he's got the ice on his eye. I really appreciate when directors can give characters some realistic business to do in the movie. The actors aren't just like talking at each other.
Every performance in this film is completely perfect and believable, both physically and from like a line delivery perspective. It's this is like a masterclass in acting by all involved. It's really amazing.
Andrew, when you mentioned the Shaggy Dog trope, you're actually thinking of the film The Shaggy Dog starring Tim Allen.
I thought he was thinking of season 3 of Scooby-Doo.
No, I don't like Scooby-Doo. I would never watch that.
You don't like Scooby-Doo?
No, never have.
I like Scooby-Doo. I watched it when I was a kid. I liked that show.
I didn't like it when I was a kid.
They're a charming group of detectives, young detectives.
Yeah.
So next scene, a drunk guy is lying on the bar and everyone's just hanging out, playing billiards, whatever. Tony tells a story and he tells Charlie that, like, at the end of the story, Tony tells Charlie that Charlie needs to be more like Tony to be safe in the world. While this is happening, and this is interesting the way it's shot too, we kind of follow a nondescript guy coming in and sitting down at the bar. And it's kind of like a tight close-up. We mostly see the back of his head. He has long hair, but it's kind of hidden like underneath his long jacket. And he doesn't speak or anything like that. But, obviously something's going to happen there because we took the time to follow him. Our main trio, Charlie, Johnny, and Tony, are sitting at a table and they're playing cards while the drunk guy who was on the bar, he kind of gets up and stumbles to the bathroom.
I want to make an observation here. Just
please
do.
It's your podcast.
You're describing something about this film that's incorrect, or about the scene that's incorrect, that I think is really important.
Are you sure?
The boys are not playing cards in this scene. What happens in this scene is, while the thing that you're describing is happening, Charlie is like thirstily walking around to every person at the bar asking them to play cards with him, but everyone says no. And so Charlie like really wants to engage with the people around him, but nobody is interested in playing a game with him. So he's actually being rejected by everybody in the bar. Like nobody wants to play a game with him while this is happening.
So the guy who walked into the bar, that we followed kind of into the bar, who sat down, he gets up and he follows the drunk guy into the bathroom. And there's this kind of odd moment where he kind of like lets his hair down, literally. And then he pulls out a pistol and shoots the drunk guy in the back twice. But it seems like it's a small caliber. It doesn't drop the guy that, the way that it does in action films where it's like, oh, you get shot once and you're just dead because you're a henchman or whatever. He is still active. He's still moving. And so he grabs this assassin and pushes him into the bar. So there's a big struggle. The assassin shoots him some more. They stumble outside and the drunk guy collapses in the alleyway.
Yeah, because I think it as part of the card playing interaction, there was also the story when they're talking, Johnny and Tony and Charlie are talking, and he tells that story about the Mack truck, and Tony has kind of come to the conclusion that the church is a business, and Charlie clearly still has faith, and he has faith in everything. He has faith in God, he has faith in humanity, he has faith in Johnny Boy. Like that's just part of his character.
It's a really good observation. I agree. Charlie is the only one who has faith in this film, right?
Yes.
Like the other character who has some faith, whom we really haven't even met yet, is Teresa. But the only thing she has faith in is Charlie, right?
Agreed.
Charlie is a true believer. Like he is in spite of his torturedness, he's still an optimist. I think he believes in the people and in the world around him.
Well, the only other thing I want to note about that scene is that, because we did discuss this a little bit yesterday when we were hanging out in person, but Mike did think that the assassin was a woman. But we ran the tape back. We went and checked, pulled it up on the old YouTube, or I guess you purchased it, so we checked it that way on your Apple TV.
Did, yeah.
And it was pretty clearly a man.
That's my prosopagnosia at work here. So I just learned that word yesterday from Andrew.
Yes, prosopagnosia. In one of the next scenes, they discuss that the killer was a man. It's like it's the son of one of the mob people.
Yes, that's correct. I just assumed it was a mistake.
just like when Tony said tiger, you were like, why would they say that? It's obviously a kangaroo.
This is
a good point.
This is an extremely important scene, right? And its irrelevance to the plot is what makes it important, right? It happened in the bar. It happened to Charlie and his friends, but they don't understand it and they're not involved with it at all. It's meant to show like how much bigger and more violent the mob world is than they have any role in their small time roles. But it still is something that victimizes them to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
So the guys at the bar, they get into a car and listen, I don't really remember the significance of this scene, but they hang out with two gay guys, Sammy and some other guy whose name I didn't catch, who get into the car to ride with them after the shooting. And Sammy, he's really drunk. He's very, loud and rambunctious. And so he's catcalling guys while they're in the car driving. And so the guys kick Sammy and his friend out. And so it's just Johnny, Charlie, and Tony, the trio, continuing.
It's just more Shaggy Dog scene setting, I think.
Yeah, I think also probably at the time that showcasing the openly gay people like that was probably a little bit more taboo, perhaps. And, you talk about like the racial aspects of the movie. There's sexuality aspects of the movie. Just even just like putting it out there is significant, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a liberalism, right? There's a liberalism to Scorsese's vantage point in the story he tells and the characters he chooses to highlight that I think is like, it's a broad pastiche, but I do think this is part of it. I agree.
So Johnny and Charlie, they get out of the car and they have a fun, like this is a moment of levity in the film. They play fight with some garbage can lids. It's like, it's real late/early. They're kind of the only ones out and they're having this good time, but it's interrupted when Johnny kind of freaks out. He worries because he thinks that he saw someone to whom he owes money and they just kind of walk around after. But you can kind of see, how paranoid Johnny is, how on edge he is about this situation because he's in pretty deep.
Yes.
Afterwards, they go back to Charlie's apartment. It's 6 a.m, so they had themselves a late night. But New York is the city that never sleeps. And Charlie spies on a woman changing through his window. So it's kind of like, it's a tall, big New York City apartment building, and he's able to see her window because they're kind of close to the corner. So he's able to kind of like see at a 45-degree angle through her window into her bedroom. So we hard cut to Charlie being in bed with a woman that he was spying on a few minutes ago. Her name is Teresa, and she is Johnny's cousin. So there's absolutely no suggestion that Charlie is related to either of them in any way in the film. Charlie is secretly dating Teresa, and they have a conversation where, she clearly wants to make things more serious with him or be more serious with him, but he explicitly tells her that he won't fall in love with her. So we're learning more about the Charlie character. He's trying to juggle, these different things. His career as a mobster, his friendship with Johnny, his relationship with Teresa. So there's a lot going on there. As they leave the apartment, Charlie tells Teresa about the shooting, and that's where we learn that the relationship is a secret. And we also get a really unpleasant bit of racism that I'm going to highlight because I think it is connected to what Mike was talking about earlier in the episode, that as they're walking out of the apartment, there is a black
maid.
It's just like, this is an apartment building, right? They had a maid service there?
I thought they went to a hotel.
Or they had a hotel hooking up. Okay, they were in a different location. That makes a lot more sense.
Right. But there's just a relationship a secret.
Yeah, they're walking through the hall and there's just like a black maid doing some work in the hall, and Teresa is just very like rude and racist to her. And so I was more sympathetic to Teresa up until that point. But is there anything you want to say about that, Mike, in relation to the whole race politics angle of this film?
It's interesting. I actually don't remember that happening. Somehow I missed it on both viewings.
Yeah, I think it's very significant, and the reason why will be revealed a little bit later. Teresa's racism. I also thought it was weird when they're in bed and Charlie makes the finger gun at Teresa. They have an actual gunshot sound effect play over that. I didn't understand that. That was very strange.
I wasn't sure if it was just to heighten the mood of the scene, consistent with Charlie's emotional interpretation of the events, or if it was supposed to signal something different. I wasn't quite sure.
I, too, do not know what to say about that.
I thought at the moment of the scene, I thought it was like a fantasy of his, maybe. But then clearly it's not with what happens in the rest of the movie.
I don't know. I think that Charlie does really love Teresa, right? Even though he won't say it to her. And so maybe he wishes he doesn't, or wishes he didn't, rather. Maybe that's what that's meant to signal.
Interesting. Yeah, she does say that she loves him.
Right, he won't say it, but he obviously does love her. He is deeply in love with her, as he is with Johnny. So they're his, the albatross is around his neck, right, as it were, kind of, holding him back in his career, and in Teresa's case, holding him back from being as morally upright as he would like to be in the ways he would like to be, since he's in this, premarital relationship that he thinks is sinful.
Albatross around his neck is quite the mixed metaphor.
I'm all about that.
So there's a big old outdoor celebration or feast occurring, and we follow Charlie as he walks into a restaurant. This is like a mob-controlled restaurant, and so he overhears a mob meeting about the shooting, and he overhears his uncle Giovanni, the mid-level mobster to whom Charlie reports, telling the father of the shooter to send his son to Miami for 6 months. So that's kind of like, thing you do in the mob. Sometimes when the heat's on you, you just have to lay low for a while.
And this restaurant is Mario's restaurant, where he met the owner earlier. And Charlie is going to get this restaurant. So Uncle Gio is going to assume ownership of the restaurant because it was collateral for money that he lent to the restaurant owner. And Charlie is going to be given the restaurant to run once it's a mob outfit.
Yeah, I assumed that at the time I didn't quite make the connection, but now I assume that getting a restaurant in that sense means you have some kind of mob authority. Like the restaurant is a euphemism.
Yes, I mean, I think that what Charlie is working toward in this film is getting made, getting an establishment that he runs as a mob outfit, which would be both a front but also a legitimate business that he would reap revenue from.
Yes,
and it would make him a more entrenched, more senior member of the organization. So that's what he's working toward. He is on the cusp of moving up in the organization in this this period of a week or two that's happening in the movie.
A tiny bit of an aside, but I think it's interesting. The mobsters, they have an oath that they take.
Omerta.
And the only thing that they have to promise...
Ruwenge.
It means omerta. It means rewenge.
The only thing that they have to promise is that they will never reveal or talk about the organization. They have to act as if the organization doesn't exist. That's the core oath of the mafia.
It's like Fight Club in that way.
After this, Charlie's walking on the beach with Teresa, and they're having a bit of a heart-to-heart. She wants to move out of her apartment and into a new one, and specifically, she wants him to move in with her. And he is incredibly reluctant about this. He basically argues that he needs to stay in the neighborhood and that he needs to help Johnny, which she doesn't like. She does not hold her cousin Johnny in high esteem.
She hates Johnny.
And just as a reminder, Johnny and Teresa are siblings.
They're cousins.
They are cousins. They are not siblings.
Cousins.
Yes. But yes, she hates him because Teresa is the smartest character in the film, right?
Oh yeah.
She understands both Charlie and Johnny better than they understand themselves and better than anybody else understands them. That's why she loves Charlie, because she can see through all the bullshit and sees that in his heart, even though he does morally questionable things, he is a good person. And similarly, even though he's very charismatic and some people like him, she can see that Johnny is a monster whom no one should trust or let be close to them.
I thought it was also significant in the scene where it's clear that Teresa is not a religious person while Charlie remains one. They have a bit of an argument about that.
Right. She doesn't know who Francis of Assisi is, right?
And that might be part of his reservation about why he doesn't want to move forward with her completely. Maybe.
No, I think his
I don't think
reservation
that's
about not wanting
implied
to
at
move
all.
forward with her is because he has been forbidden by his uncle to see her.
Yes. And this is interesting because the scene ends and we go from being with Charlie and Teresa to cutting to Charlie back at the bar, and he's talking to Diane, the black dancer. So he's telling her, he's trying to impress her, and he's telling her about how he's planning on opening a new restaurant uptown, and he suggests to her that she become his hostess instead of being a dancer at this insane purgatory-like bar where fights break out every other day. And they make plans to discuss this over getting dinner together. So we cut to Charlie being in the cab. He's taking a cab ride to go to this restaurant, and he kind of has I guess you could call it a moment of clarity, where he has this realization, like, what am I doing? I can't be seen out with a black woman. And so he just has the cab continue past the dinner.
Right, stands her up.
And this is calling back to what I mentioned earlier about Teresa being racist in the hotel. Not that this is strictly the reason why, but just Charlie is clearly involved with a family and a life of people who are openly racist in that way. So very obviously, if he pursued a black woman and he was caught, if you want to call it that he would be rejected entirely by his family. Or not, when I say family, I mean like the extended mob family.
Yeah, I also I don't know if this is the explanation for Teresa's comment, because there is a much more explicit demonstration of what you're describing, which is that Charlie is with his friends at the bar, either soon before or soon after this, and they are literally talking shit about another person in the family or in the community or whatever who was seen kissing a black woman, and they call her the N-word and Molignan, which is an Italian slur for black people.
Oh, okay. But I just think I'm saying that that scene reinforces it. It's not the only reason.
I have a slightly different interpretation, even though I don't remember it, of the reason why they may have that scene of Teresa being racist toward the black lady in the hotel. And it's kind of tied to something I alluded to earlier, but didn't describe explicitly. So Teresa is epileptic, and for this reason, Charlie is forbidden from seeing her by his uncle, who thinks that epilepsy is like someone being possessed, essentially. And so my interpretation of the spotlighting of her casual racism is more as like those who are victimized find people lower on the social hierarchy to victimize in turn, right? Essentially, like that is more my interpretation of why the film would choose to show her behaving in that way.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I wouldn't fully disagree. I think it could also be both.
Yep, it can be both. A little bit of both.
The only thing is we don't know about the epilepsy until much later, but yeah, I have more to say about that as well.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, getting back to the plot recap, we see Charlie at a mob meeting. He's sitting at a table with his uncle Gio and some other mobster, and Charlie has a conversation with his uncle where his uncle warns Charlie about Johnny Boy, and then says that Teresa is, quote, sick in the head because of her epilepsy. So that's the much later that Andrew was referring to. And then he tells Charlie to watch her, but not get invited. It's incredible. It's incredible. I don't know how you guys take notes on films. Don't you just like go in order sequentially?
I am not reading ahead.
I did not take notes on this film.
Maybe you should, man. Maybe you fucking should.
I think I'm doing a great job for having not taken notes.
Yeah, you thought it was you thought it was Kangaroo Jack that Tony had in a cage earlier.
But taking notes wouldn't have changed that. I perceived it as a lion both times I watched the film, and I would have written it down both times as a lion. Taking notes wouldn't have changed that.
And to conclude the scene, before I let Andrew get into whatever the hell he wants to say, Charlie leaves, and as he walks through the restaurant's kitchen, there's a big old flame coming from one of the burners, and he stops to hold his hand over the flame for as long as he can handle.
No, I have a couple of things to say, and you've made me feel very welcome to say them.
That's what I do.
Oh, yeah, he has that effect.
So, of course, in this scene, we very clearly learn that Gio does not approve of either Johnny Boy or Teresa. And similar to what Mike was saying before about Charlie, it's the question of, does he know everything that's going on? And is he saying this to get Charlie to stop the relationships that he already has? Or Is it Gio just saying that he doesn't approve of them extemporaneously? I think maybe it's open to interpretation. I'm not sure. I did find this interesting that Gio doesn't like the fact that Teresa has epilepsy. Not that epilepsy is a mental health issue, but clearly those sorts of issues, health issues, people didn't really understand as well back then. They could be thought of as a result of a possession, as you described, Michael. So I just found that interesting as well. Like the basis for, clearly Johnny has mental health issues, so you should stay away from him. But you shouldn't stay away from someone who has epilepsy. Yeah, that has nothing to do with their behavior as a human being, I don't think.
So Charlie's talking to Teresa after this conversation with his uncle, and he tells him he's basically flaking out on a date that they had. He tells her that he can't make it to their dates and that he can't see her for a while because he has the restaurant lined up, and he doesn't want to jeopardize that by spending time with Johnny and Teresa. But he does admit, while having the conversation with her, that he doesn't want to stop seeing her. And she tells him that she loves him, which he has difficulty accepting, because he's reluctant to say it himself.
He also says in this scene that he thinks that things will get easier for them once he gets the restaurant. And I think that this is a really important line that could be missed because he's obviously wrong, right? Like Charlie is living in this fantasy world where eventually he is going to be able to impose the harmony that he wants onto the world and people around him, and where the world will be the way that he in his optimistic faith believes that it is or can be, but it's not, right? If he gets bumped up, it's going to make it harder for him to have relationships with the people whom he wants to have relationships with. And more than many other things, that's what this film is about, right? Is about the tension between what you want to do and what you should do, or what others want you to do.
So after that conversation, Charlie goes back to the new restaurant, which he's due to inherit, and there's a band finishing the show, and he has a conversation with Uncle Gio. So Uncle Gio tells him that Mario's business partner, some guy named Grappi, who had basically vanished at the beginning of the film, it was referenced much earlier, Grappi apparently killed himself. After that, Michael, the loan shark, to whom Johnny owes money, talks to Charlie, and this is another recurring thing. It seems like Johnny is... he's still ducking Michael, and Michael did a little looky-loo, and apparently Johnny has not been going to work anymore. He stopped going to work. So how's he going to earn the money?
It's a job that Charlie got him. Like, he got him the job. He vouched for him.
Yep. And Michael wants his money. So Charlie,
his debts.
Exactly, as a loan shark does. So Charlie, he tries to smooth things over, and he assures Michael that he'll talk to Johnny that night. So we go back to the bar, and there's another racist moment, which I think is the one that you wanted to discuss, Mike.
It is, right? They're talking about how they saw someone they know kissing a black woman, and they speak very racistly about her and use the N-word.
Yeah, that's rough. So after that moment, Charlie shows up. He arrives at the bar, and the guys, they give a gift to this guy named Jerry who served in Nam. I guess he's like a mobster who was drafted or something like that. And we get some more good times. They get into a play fight with ice and shot glasses, just all the stuff, all the accoutrement of the bar. And after this big night of partying, Charlie falls asleep in the bar.
This kicks off probably the greatest drunk scene in the history of cinema.
Yeah,
this is the Ricochet Biscuit scene.
Right. It's Rubber Biscuit. And there's more to say. So first of all, you missed something important about the scene with the combat vet, right? The combat vet has a PTSD episode in the scene and attacks a woman who's there, and Charlie has to forcibly remove him from the woman whom he's attacking and like brings her into a closet. And while it's happening, they're all saying like, "Hey, you're in America. You're in America." Clearly like breaking down from, whatever trauma he experienced overseas. And so this is a Vietnam reference, obviously, right? This is part of the chaos of the world. In this time was like just a lot of like recently returned veterans who are not doing well and are not being taken well care of by America, as it were. And then, then the Rubber Biscuit scene happens. And I agree with Andrew. I think that this is one of the most captivating depictions of what it feels like to be getting really drunk at a bar with your friends that I've ever seen in a film.
No, you have the order reversed. The soldier sexual assault happens after the Rubber Biscuit.
Oh, does it?
It's significant, yes. I think this is important. So in the soldier sexual assault scene, he smashes a cake. They have a celebratory cake. He smashes it before he jumps. And then Charlie also protects the girl. And I think that this is supposed to be important in 1973. He doesn't take advantage of her in the moment to show that he's
Caroline
like
also
a
made
good
that
guy.
observation.
Yeah.
Yep. I didn't pick up on that, but Caroline also observed that.
But they also show, like, obviously that's something that you and I would, all of the three of us would do by default. But, you know, in 1973, that's like, oh, that's a really good guy. But then also there's a shot right after that happens with Michael with cake all over his face. So I think that's kind of like Michael's humiliation. Michael wants to be a serious mobster, a serious gangster. He has not been successful. He's humiliated turn after turn in every scene. His core humiliation being Johnny owing him as much money as he does.
That's interesting. I didn't perceive that, but I buy it. I think that's a good interpretation.
Teresa comes into the bar and tells Charlie that Johnny is hanging out on a rooftop with a gun. Sounds unstable. So Charlie arrives at the building. It's obviously the middle of the night, and Johnny is just like taking shots with, I think, a .38, something small. And this is just what New York City was like in the 70s. And Johnny, like, he comes up to the rooftop. And Johnny is again acting a fool, for lack of a better term. He lights a Molotov cocktail and throws it over the side of the building like he's playing Grand Theft Auto. And they run away as the cops approach.
I think it was probably like an M80, not a Molotov
I thought it was like
cocktail.
a firecracker.
He's always using fireworks. Yeah, he's always using. I think it's like a relatively high intensity firework, like an M80
like
or something like
what
that.
he
He's
put in
always
the,
using fireworks.
That's what he put in the mailbox.
Right, what he put in the mailbox, exactly. He threw a little firecracker in the mailbox to make it explode. But it would have had to be something very powerful, like an M80 that would make a big explosion.
You know what? I think it was actually a lion. So they... so
they
they
a
have,
tiger, actually.
They have a nice bro walk. And while they're walking through a cemetery, they have a heart-to-heart. And Charlie wants Johnny to go to work, to his job, because he has a $2,000 debt to repay. But Johnny wants to take the easy way out, and he really wants Charlie to talk to Uncle Gio for him, which seems like a terrible idea for all sorts of reasons.
I want to add some color to this scene because I would not describe it as a nice heart-to-heart, right? What actually happens is... Charlie confronts Johnny for the ridiculous way he's asking. Johnny is really defensive and mean and talks about how he doesn't like the job. He doesn't like loading trucks. And Charlie says, well, you're not supposed to like it. And so then Johnny attacks him for not doing anything, for not having to work, basically. All he does is like walk around and not do any work. And so they're like fighting. And then Johnny takes this more conciliatory tone and says, like, I really do appreciate everything you've done for me. And it seems to you as a viewer that he's going to apologize. But then to your point, it's just a way for him to ingratiate himself to Charlie because he's about to make the salvo that, like, the way out of this is for you to tell your uncle that I need money to get out of this debt. But he's not really appreciative or apologetic. He really believes that he shouldn't have to work because Charlie doesn't have to work in that way.
Yeah, I also think it's kind of funny that Johnny, he doesn't think anything through. The only thing he says is that he wants Charlie to talk to Gio. Johnny doesn't have any plan. He doesn't have any specifics. He's just like, yeah, talk to your uncle, talk to Gio. You know, that's going to solve all the problems.
Like, right. Yeah.
What he's basically saying is, Charlie, solve my problems for me.
Yes.
Things are starting to escalate regarding this whole debt situation because Michael then talks to Charlie one-on-one and reiterates that he wants Johnny to show up to this meeting to pay his $2,000 debts. And then we see Michael follow Teresa into her building, which is really, really unnerving. And he basically confronts her. It's like a softer kind of confrontation, but he asks her to tell Johnny to show up later that night. She's not happy about that.
Yeah, I think this also continues Michael's humiliation in some sense, his desire to be a wannabe gangster. You know, Teresa isn't scared by him at all or take him seriously at all.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, she drops the groceries, pick up my eggplant. You know, if you want Johnny, talk to him yourself. That has nothing to do with me.
It's also like pretty dishonorable and I think in a way emasculating to like knock a woman's groceries out of her hands. Like it's like you're so weak that you needed to lash out physically in a way that like impacted this woman's like movement, right? Like he's embarrassed by it. He's like, look at me, like, and he like kind of helps her pick up the groceries. He is further emasculated in this scene.
Well, he's trying. Like, he doesn't know how to be the gangster, tough guy boss that he wants to be. He's trying different things, and none of them are working.
Yeah.
So the camera's following Johnny now. We're walking at night, and we're getting more of that handheld, shaky kind of cam, which again, it became very common in in later decades. But at the time, I think, it's a very innovative shooting technique. So really cool. And we see that he's really not doing well either. He's just kind of walking down the street, down the sidewalk, and he bumps into a stranger and just beats the shit out of them for no reason at all in front of a crowd, and then he runs off. Meanwhile, while this is happening, Charlie and Teresa, they're having a conversation discussing the new apartment that Teresa wants to get, and Charlie kind of blows up at her because he does not, or claims he doesn't want to move in with her, that he can't do it. We're kind of going back and forth between Charlie and Johnny here. So while this is happening, we see Johnny jumping on rooftops at night like he's fucking Batman, and he kind of goes down the fire escape down to Charlie's window and knocks on the window and lets himself in while Charlie is talking to Teresa. So Charlie's mad at him about this, and as I think we all would. And he says that they're going to be late to see Michael. So while Johnny is in the apartment with Charlie and Teresa, he's really being needlessly antagonistic. So he's being a dick about, he sees what's going on, the relationship between them, but he's needlessly being a dick about the relationship between Charlie and Teresa, and he just escalates it. He makes a lewd comment about Teresa, like a really explicit comment, and basically provokes Charlie into fighting him. Incredibly self-destructive. While this occurs, this occurs in like the stairwell of the building. Charlie accidentally falls on Teresa because Charlie and Johnny are kind of shoving each other. Again, it's like play fighting. There are no real consequences up until this point. Charlie falls on Teresa, and that triggers an epileptic seizure. While this happens, Johnny Boy just runs out. He just dashes out of the building.
So in this scene, clearly Johnny Boy has some resentment towards Charlie. He says Charlie likes everybody. Everybody likes Charlie. It's obvious.
The scene where he calls him a politician. I referenced it at the top. Yeah,
that's right. It's clear. We already knew, but Johnny Boy knows about Teresa and Charlie's relationship. It's implied that Johnny is keeping quiet about it, even though he doesn't need to or he couldn't. And then, Teresa has the seizure, and then Johnny Boy flees, and Charlie pursues him. Charlie won't even stay with his girlfriend who's having a seizure. He would rather go after Johnny Boy.
Yeah, so Charlie confronts Johnny outside, and they calm down. Johnny admits that he has no money. So Charlie, again, trying to help his buddy out, help a brother out, he gives just some money, some petty cash that he happens to have on him to Johnny.
Like $20.
$20.
So little money.
Yeah. To give to Michael, just to hold him over, just give him something as a sign of good grace. But he does tell Johnny, he reiterates, I will not talk to my uncle about this. So they show up to the bar an hour late. This is the night when the collection was supposed to happen. And Michael has left temporarily because he, was waiting for them to arrive. So Johnny says he's going to go to the bathroom. So while Johnny's at the bathroom, there's an interesting moment here in the scene where there is a woman sitting at the end of the bar, and there's kind of speculation, like Charlie asks the bartender about her, and there's some speculation about her ethnicity. The bartender thinks that she's Jewish. So again, like just more about the race politics, in Little Italy in the early 70s. And Charlie goes over to talk to her, but it seems like she's with a guy, or there's another guy trying to leave with her. And this immediately escalates into a confrontation between Charlie and that guy. But that kind of happens. The woman and that man leave. And as that happens, Michael arrives.
Yeah. So the one thing I will say about it, because you didn't say that it happens, is that if I recall correctly, Charlie grabs the woman in a way that's pretty aggressive and violent. Yes. And this is really the only violent thing that we see Charlie do in the film. And so my interpretation of this is that he's at the end of his rope. Like he is like so taxed emotionally by all these things that he's trying to juggle, all these things that are happening, that he's cracking. He's doing something that we otherwise wouldn't see him as someone who would do, behaving kind of violently toward a woman.
Yeah, call back to the earlier scene where he explicitly doesn't
Correct.
take advantage of the drunk woman. I interpret it a little differently than you, although I think what you say makes sense and is correct. But I think also just that in general, I think Charlie is kind of presented as and thinks of himself as a good person overall. Mm-hmm. And this moment is kind of saying that maybe he's not such a great person as we might all think.
Yes.
So Michael arrives at the bar, and Johnny gives Michael the $30 that Charlie had given him earlier. And, because it's a bar and everyone's having drinks or whatever, Michael's upset about this. He's not pleased about the, $30 rather than the $2,000 he was supposed to get. And De Niro is being a real prick about it. He's just very nonchalantly joking that he spent all of the other money on buying rounds of drinks for the bar patrons. And then Johnny gets in Michael's face, insults him, and calls him a jerk off. So this, so again, he's very provocative. So Michael jumps Johnny, and a fight's about to break out. The 20th fight in this film is about to break out, but you shouldn't bring fists to a gunfight. Johnny pulls out the gun and basically tells Michael, yeah, try it, tough guy. And so Michael leaves. Again, this is the biggest humiliation of them all, right? It happens in front of everyone at the bar. Everyone was just palling around, having a good time, but Michael sulks out of the bar. Charlie is pissed about this. Really incredible acting by everyone involved. And so Charlie jams Johnny up, and he's like, what the fuck are you doing? Are you serious?
Yeah, I want to add something here. Because you're not describing, I think, the most important thing about the scene. This is the Robert De Niro monologue in the movie, right? Besides his improvised, excuse that he gave at the beginning for why he doesn't have any money. So the thing that incites Michael attacking him, which starts the confrontation that Mike is describing, is Johnny Boy says this: "You too good for this $10? It's a good $10. Michael, you make me laugh. You see, I borrow money all over this neighborhood, left and right from everybody. I never pay them back. So I can't borrow no money from nobody no more, right? So who would that leave me to borrow money from but you? I borrow money from you because you're the only jerk off around here who I can borrow money from without paying back, right? Because that's what you are. That's what I think of you, a jerk off. You're a fucking jerk off. You're laughing because you're a jerk off. I'll tell you something else. I fuck you right where you breathe because I don't give two shits about you or nobody else." And that's what makes him jump him. And I think it's a great De Niro monologue, but I think it's the encapsulation of Johnny's character, right? That's who he really is.
Absolutely.
He doesn't care. This is the moment where we see the truth about Johnny in this scene. And so does Michael, which is why he reacts the way he does, because now he sees the truth. This isn't somebody you can reason with, basically.
And then he burns the $10.
Yes, he burns the $10 during the monologue.
Yeah, very funny. I also want to, I like Tony's character. I just want to point out this moment for him. Tony disarms Johnny Boy with the gun. So Tony diffuses the fight.
He's the one who disarms Johnny Boy. They take a look at the revolver and they see that it was unloaded. It was just it was just a bluff. Mike, I think you did a great job with that monologue, and you should consider potentially acting as a late career pivot.
There you go. Yep.
You're a regular Robert De Niro.
De Niro impression.
That was your Robert De Niro impression. You just are an Italian American male. Just that's my impression. Just you talking is your impression. Guess what, guys? We're in the home stretch of this here movie. So obviously there's a lot of heat happening, right? A lot of stuff happening right now. And so Charlie asks Tony, can I borrow your car? I want to leave town for a while with Johnny until the heat dies down. So Tony allows Charlie to borrow the car. They go to leave, and they're just laying low watching a movie at night. And then Charlie calls Teresa.
Go to the movies again.
Yeah, they go to the movies again. It happens twice in the film. Scorsese loves his cinema.
3 times, actually, but sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, who's keeping count? Charlie has a phone call with Teresa and kind of clues her into what's happening. And so she insists that she's going to join. And it's, again, classic. This is really legitimately good comedy, really great comedic beats, because they're on this call and Charlie straight up tells her, you're not coming with us. And then you hard cut to Teresa being in the backseat of the car with the two of them. So it's really good.
That's a good one. I can't claim to understand women. If I were Teresa, I would not want to go with a man who abandoned me while I was having a seizure.
She loves him. She understands him.
Right. She loves him, and I think she could understand Charlie's reflexive response to chase after Johnny Boy. He was the cause of all of that.
Look, guys, I wouldn't abandon either one of you if you were having a seizure. I just want you to know that now.
I really appreciate that.
I find this scene in the car transcendent. I think it's maybe the most important scene in the entire film.
I agree.
So I maybe want to observe something that I think that you might skip over, because I think there's a little aside that tells you everything in like 5 or 10 seconds about these characters and their relationship, and it's incredible. It's like, it is probably the best storytelling we have seen in this podcast. So they're in the car. And it's really funny, honestly. It's a really funny scene. And Charlie is driving and he's talking to God. He says, I know tonight ain't going so good, but I'm trying my best.
He's praying.
And yes, he's praying. And that's what talking to God is, Andrew.
Yeah.
And it's a very serious moment. And Teresa bursts out laughing and says, who are you fucking talking to? And Johnny bursts out laughing and they just start making fun of him. And he's kind of laughing too. And it's tremendous. It is tremendously powerful. Like, to see the familiarity that these three characters have with each other. And it also, Mike can talk about what's going to happen basically immediately after this happens, but we are seeing the kind of apex of the way this film carries you through the emotional experiences of its characters in this moment. Because even though they are in this horribly dire situation that is about to go terribly wrong in about 15 seconds, this is like a joyous scene. They're so happy to be together. Like, they're laughing, they're singing, they're making fun of each other. Like, it's like the most important thing is the friendship that he has with these two people. It's not the circumstances that are happening. Like, this is Scorsese's thesis. This isn't a plot focused movie. This is about the relationships and the chemistry that Charlie has with the two most important people in his life.
I agree with that completely. And just to add to it, I think just in the way it's directed, it's shot, even in the performances, it's very clear that it's about to go very wrong very quickly. Like, inevitably, they can't have this much fun. It's not going to all be all right. They're about to suffer.
But you think it might be, right? Like, that's what makes it so effective. You're like,
no, you don't. It's called Mean Streets. It's not called Happy Streets.
If you let yourself get swept up in it, I know. Like, it's
right.
It's like how when you watch Titanic, what makes James Cameron's storytelling so effective is that up until the last moment, you think maybe the ship isn't going to sink.
Right. Jesus Christ, man. Spoilers.
Is even when narratively or due to the historical nature of something, you know what's going to happen, when you still are able to get swept up in the emotion of the storytelling. Like, that is effective filmmaking.
I do want to say I have a much darker interpretation of that the car driving scene than you do, Michael, but I think we should finish the movie, and then, because that's part of the overarching themes.
So while they're driving, this car suddenly pulls up next to them. Michael's driving it, and his goon, henchman, whatever you want to call him, Jimmy, pulls out a gun, a real loaded gun, like a real gangster would have, and starts popping shots off at Charlie's car.
Do you know, by the way, who played Jimmy? It's important. It's Martin Scorsese.
Oh, it's Marty. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's
Cameo.
great.
Yeah, so this is his appearance in the film. He plays this character.
So Jimmy starts taking shots at the car, and he shoots Johnny in the neck, and he shoots Charlie in the arm. So since Charlie's driving, this causes him to crash into a fire hydrant. Very dramatic scene. You know, the fire, it's of course, it's pitch black out because it's nighttime. It's always nighttime in this film. And Teresa seems to be pretty badly injured. Like, she goes through the windshield, kind of partially, like her arm is kind of slumped over the windshield. Those cars were not very safe back then. Johnny gets out of the car, and he kind of like staggers into this alley, and he walks towards a white light, and we see that the white light, it's actually the headlights of a cop car that's pulling up to the scene of this accident. Charlie gets out of the car. He's really dazed, and he kind of just like kneels by the hydrant while the water is kind of raining down on him. And we don't know for a bit whether or not Teresa's alive, but paramedics come and they pull her out, and they tend to Teresa and Charlie, and we don't know what happens to Johnny, but that's when the film ends.
Well, the other thing that happens before the film ends that I just want to make sure we acknowledge is
I knew we were gonna.
We see what's happening with all the other characters in the film, right? So it like cuts away and we see what all of the supporting characters are doing, and it's supposed to be just showing us like where everyone else has ended up, and everyone else is basically where you'd expect them to be, but our main three characters are experiencing this chaos, right? Mm-hmm. And then to your point, that is the end of the film.
So that's Mean Streets, which means it's time to get into our final thoughts, final ratings. You know, we use the letterboxed scale here. And of course, we need to start with our illustrious guest, Andrew. What would you give Mean Streets?
I rate the movie 4 stars, but I don't think it's the movie's fault. I will only give a movie 5 stars or higher than that if I have a very strong emotional connection and impact. And recall what I said earlier, that I was viewing this movie very academically. I paused frequently. I rewound. I was taking notes. So it's hard for a movie to have a very strong emotional impact on you when you're going through that experience. So, you know, if I just watched the movie purely by itself, maybe it could have gotten a higher rating, but 4 stars is my rating for this movie.
It's interesting. Why'd you choose to watch it in a way that would actively like detract from your ability to connect with it?
For the pod.
Yeah.
I think the analysis is important. I would not have provided the analyses that I did had I not watched it in that way.
Okay. To each their own. Anything else you'd like to say about the film in its totality before we move to Mike?
I have a whole list of bullet points of themes, and
Then say them. When do you think you're going to say them if not now? Tell us your thoughts. You don't just have to rate it. Yeah. What did you think this movie was about, Andrew? All right. What about it did resonate with you? Like, tell us about it. You can talk for 5 minutes.
It was about.
Give us your thoughts.
So here's the thing. This is what makes it complex, okay? Because I think that the movie, I know that it could reach that 5-star level, okay? It was just about the emotional impact that it had on me in the moment. I think it would have had more of an impact, but I like exploring and analyzing the movie as well. And when you take something like that apart academically, you can't appreciate the emotionality as much, I think. Maybe that's just me. But anyway, going into the themes of the movie, one that I really like, you can be a good person and a bad person at the same time. That's like the noble mobster. That's who Charlie is, Harvey Keitel's character. Another big one, your benevolence may be rejected. And that men, you know, I say men because I am a man and I have the man experience. Men should go out on their own. And that's really the Johnny Boy Charlie relationship, where I think Charlie feels an obligation to help out Johnny Boy, but really he's just holding him back. He's doing the worst thing that he should do for him. Charlie should let Johnny Boy fail. Johnny Boy has no appreciation for what Charlie does for him at all. In fact, he hates it. He doesn't want to be parented by
the
Charlie.
Care, like, right? Yeah.
And I, you know, the funny thing is also, and that's the scene in the car. I've known people like that as well, where Johnny Boy thinks, well, he doesn't purely think this, but he's saying that I know I'm keeping your relationship with Teresa a secret, therefore you owe me. Now, if you were a good friend and you appreciated what Charlie did for you, then that would, you know, you wouldn't even consider that. But Johnny is using that as a justification for everything. Like, because you're not a perfect person, I can take advantage of you in some way, or, you know. But at the same time, and it's complex, because at the same time, Johnny rejects his benevolence. He doesn't want it. He doesn't need it, but he's willing to take it, and he's angry about it. So very dark, deep mental health issues. And I've experienced this in my own life as well. Like, this is a very real human situation, which I think is fascinating. There are also a lot of religious themes, which I appreciated, being more religious than both of you in quite a bit. And there's also themes doing the right thing for the wrong reason, or doing the wrong thing for the right reason, you know, like taking care of Johnny. So it's just a very human story. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, just exploring all of those ideas of like what actually happens in the movie in terms of the plot and the day-to-day events doesn't matter as much. It's these ideas of mental health, which I think was not as well understood in the 1970s, but that's a clear major component of the movie. Relationships between people, you know, sin and punishment and spiritual pain, physical pain. And obviously we talked about some of the sub-themes of racism and, bigotry. And yeah, I mean, I just liked all of that because that's pretty much what the movie is. And then it ends, and then that's it. There's no like clean wrap up or anything like that. The ending is a little bit ambiguous. Clearly that's intentional. So that was how I felt about the movie, and I really enjoyed this movie quite a lot. I considered watching it again, and I probably should, without taking notes, doing it, just watching it as a pure experience, and I think I would appreciate it a lot more. from a movie watching perspective, but from an academic perspective, I think this movie is almost perfect. And the one last thing, I know I mentioned this before, I feel like it's something that, and maybe I just miss it. I think you guys don't necessarily compliment the performances as much as I think you should sometimes. All of the performances in this movie were amazing. They were all great. Everyone was, pitch
I literally
perfect.
said that an hour ago.
Incredible performances in the movie.
Mike, what did you think of Mean Streets?
I was just about to say, your episode, Mike. You need to lead me in. I have so much to say about this. This film is transcendent. It's an easy 5-star. This is, I think that for the purposes of the podcast, I think I want to articulate when something is, I guess, what I have to describe colloquially as a 5.5 star. So this is like instantly one of my favorite movies of all time. It's like an instant top 10 for me. The last time I saw a film for the first time that I loved this much was First Reformed, which was 2.5 years ago. And so this is far and away my favorite film that we have seen for the podcast. And I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up being the number one film that I see for the first time during the podcast, just based on just how triumphant I found it. This is a masterpiece of storytelling. Like, it's honestly fucking unbelievable to me. Like, the character of Charlie is one of the most just tremendously compelling characters I have ever perceived in a work of fiction. He's so tortured. He is so relatable, and he is such a good person in his way. But to our earlier comments, he's a noble gangster, right? Which is something that you can't be. He's not a good person. He's the best version of that. But it doesn't make him good, right? Similarly, I think that Teresa is likewise one of the more compelling characters I have perceived in a work of fiction. The way that the world has victimized her and how that has hardened her, but also left her wise and soft in the way that she sees others better and more truly than they see themselves, or than that they're perceived by others. And the character of Johnny is despicable in a hilarious way. Like, this is one of the most repugnant characters whom De Niro has ever played, right? Like, in a long, I think, line of repugnant characters whom he's depicted. But the performance is so funny. He's so believable. Like, Johnny Boy, as Andrew has commented upon, is a totally realistic person. We've all met someone like this, right? And hopefully most people have not let someone like this be as close to them as Charlie allows Johnny to be with him, because it's incredibly dangerous to love somebody who's like this. Like, they can really destroy your life. But we all know somebody like this. And it's an incredibly earnest and truthful depiction of this kind of just like nightmare monster of a person who truly does not care about anything or anyone other than themselves. And so I want to talk about some of the themes, right? So let's talk about like goodness and morality and guilt and the things that are important to us, right? It's fascinating that the things that Charlie generally is depicted as being tortured over are not the things he does that actually matter, right? The things that he feels guilty about are being in the bar, lusting after women, sleeping with Teresa. He doesn't seem to feel any guilt over the crimes he commits, and I don't think that he perceives them as wrong. The effects of the violence he occasionally participates in, but that he occasionally perpetrates himself, but is always a participant in, are abstracted from him. We never see their effects directly on screen, and it doesn't seem like he really perceives them. And so he doesn't feel guilty for that. He doesn't feel guilty for participating in a violent mafia syndicate that steals money from people and perpetrates violence. He feels guilty for lusting after a black lady. And like, one of those things is wrong and one of them isn't. And it's just like a fascinating depiction of the things that we do and don't feel guilty about. I think that it is also an incredibly powerful depiction of something that I think everyone does or should learn at some time in their life, which is that it is incredibly dangerous to love someone. It's the most dangerous thing that you can do, and you need to be really thoughtful and really careful about whom you love and whom you let into your life, because as soon as you love someone, you are vulnerable to them, and you do not want to be vulnerable to someone who is untrustworthy or morally unsavory. And I think that that is the kind of observation that you can just say, right, like I just did, but the way you learn that lesson is by having it happen to you, or I think potentially by seeing it depicted in a story like this, because it kind of shows the full color and range of experience and emotion that's a part of that lesson. And it's amazing. It's unbelievable. I think the soundtrack is on a whole other level. It's obviously one of the greatest film soundtracks of all time. It is important to note, too, that this was not done before this film. So this was the first film that did a soundtrack like this. And so Martin Scorsese was like pioneering this style of music for a film, which is so passé now. Like hundreds of films have done this, but it was not done before this film was made. And it's amazing. And I want to use the music to segue into the race politics. So I think it's very interesting that we basically hear two types of music in this film. When we see Charlie interacting with the older characters, like his uncle, and like some of the other older folks, we hear traditional Italian music from the 40s and 50s. And when Charlie is with his friends, we hear doo-wop, soul, and pop standards from the, I would say, like late 50s to mid 60s, most of which, in case you two or viewers are not aware, were recorded by Black artists. And so we see the ways that these younger Italian characters are engaging with Blackness in a way that is kind of like, it's a little bit exploratory, like dipping their toes in the water, like they'd like to explore maybe not being so racist, and like there are things they like about Black people and Black culture, right? Like the music, like Charlie is very attracted to Diane, even though he feels like he shouldn't be because of the norms and social mores of his culture. And it's just a fascinating dichotomy between like what the soundtrack is of the older members of the community and the soundtrack of the younger members of the community being exploratory from like a racial or race politics perspective. I think the expressionism in the movie is very interesting. And I think that there are lots of examples, as we alluded to throughout the discussion, of ways that the cinematography, direction, and editing are used to enhance the story that's being told rather than relying solely on the script or the text or dialogue of the narrative. That's really special. It's better than I've seen it done, I think, in really hardly any other film I've ever seen. And I think that this film is just it is a tremendously resonant depiction of what it feels like to love people, of what it feels like to be young, to be stupid, to be figuring out who you're going to be. I think this is a coming of age story, right? And, you know, what Charlie is coming of age into wasn't something good. I'd like to think that maybe it can be something good now that this has happened to him. I don't think Charlie dies at the end of the film. Hopefully Johnny does, right? And hopefully this will be a wake-up call for him to realize, like, I don't want to be a part of this life. Like, I have encountered the violence that is manifest in this lifestyle that I thought I wanted for myself, and I don't actually want this. I'd like to think, that this could be an opportunity for her to maybe turn away from a crime or from a life of crime and violence towards something a little bit more decent that I think is more in keeping with the way that he wants to think of himself. But who knows? You know, that's up to interpretation. But I think that just as an arc, as a coming of age story, and as an exploration of the core, most fundamental parts of the human experience, what it feels like to love your friends, what it feels like to love your lover, what it feels like to experience life, like the jolt, the like whiplash of the joy in the car to the drive-by shooting to the chaos of the end of the film all takes place over like 60 seconds, and it is so jarring. Like that is something that only film can do. Only a film can control the way you experience a series of events in that way that can take you on that journey. And this is just like one of the best films to ever do it. Like, this is amazing. Martin Scorsese is maybe like the greatest director of all time, and this is better than almost anything I've ever seen by him. And I'm so happy to have watched this movie. I love it. I cannot possibly recommend it any more passionately than I am. And so it is a 5-star for me.
Thank you, Mike. That was an incredible filibuster. And now I guess we'll get into my final thoughts on Mean Streets. This is tough because I feel like I'm going to let Mike down here. I'm actually also going to give Mean Streets 4 out of 5 stars. And I really can't even disagree. I don't want to disagree with anything that you just said, Mike. I think that was a really compelling defense of the film. it just didn't work for me on that same level. And I think it had to do with the script and choices that Scorsese made as a director. So overall, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. I liked it a lot. I think it's a great film. I think it's a very strong early entry in Scorsese's filmography. But to me, it felt uneven. It was ambitious but uneven, and I can see a lot of the DNA that he would carry through into later films, and that would become staples or tropes of crime dramas, crime cinema, crime TV, things like The Sopranos, just decades down the road. So I do want to give credit where it's due. Things like the soundtrack, that sort of thing, being innovative choices. So, what stood out for me in a positive way, obviously we said this many times during the recap, it's not so much about the plot as it is about the themes that it's reckoning with and the characters that, Charlie and Johnny, their relationship, et cetera, et cetera. So I really liked Scorsese. He nails the sense of place. Little Italy. It is a character unto itself, and he does a great job of making you feel just how gritty and raw and frenetic this place is. So it's very specific in a way that really indicates just how talented of a filmmaker he is. And those choices like the handheld camera work and that sort of naturalistic dialogue, the improvisation, the on-location shooting, this is all clearly shot on location in New York, in Little Italy in the early 70s. And it really creates this very raw sense of immediacy that I really loved visually. Obviously, Keitel and De Niro, they do give excellent performances. That relationship, it works. It has to. That's what the whole film hinges upon. And it is successful at giving the film its kind of emotional core and that narrative tension. One thing that I didn't like, though, I wasn't as into the soundtrack as you were, Mike. I don't even disagree with you. I think it's a really good soundtrack. All of Scorsese's picks are excellent, and it does reflect some of the themes that we discussed in the film. But I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Yes, on the one hand, this is the first time that was done. This Scorsese chooses a lot of doo-wop and classic rock songs that were 15 to 20 years old at the time, and that's really interesting. And I think it's just it's not even necessarily the fault of the film in a sense, but that sort of needle dropping has been done to death. And it's such a lazy crutch in filmmaking nowadays that I didn't love how often it was happening in Mean Streets. I felt like there were points where it felt like the film leaned too heavily on those needle drops, and that could feel like a substitute for the narrative moving forward. I think it's a film that is more successful in terms of its thematic cohesion than it is telling the story. It tells a story. It's light. It's a little lighter on plot than I'd necessarily prefer, just like structurally speaking. And that has the result of the film, for me at least, feeling kind of meandering at points. It felt a little aimless at certain points, and I checked out a few times. But overall, I do think it was successful, and that sort of roughness is part of the overall appeal of the film. So that's, to me, it felt like great early Scorsese. I could see a director kind of finding his voice. It was a very confident early film in his filmography, and that's why I'm giving it a 4 out of 5.
I don't agree, but I think this is just, this is just a thing that we can chalk up to our different tastes, right? The thematic cohesion is the only thing I care about, and I like stories that are meandering. So there you go.
Yeah. So now it's time to move into our next segment, recommendations. And of course, we're going to start with our guest, Andrew. Andrew, is there a film that you would like to recommend in addition to Mean Streets?
Yeah, so I thought about this a lot. I had quite a few ideas, but I decided to consolidate in the spirit of the pod to one recommendation. And I am going with Empire Records, directed by Alan Boyle. It's a 1995 film. It stars Liv Tyler, among quite a few other people. And I don't want to say a lot about the movie because I don't want to spoil it, but it's similar in some ways thematically. I think if you watched it, you would get where I'm going in terms of the relationship between the two movies. But Empire Records, I'll just say up front, it's a dramedy in the same way, but it's a much more positive movie. It has a happy ending, So it's not exactly the same in that way, but just some of the explorations of human relationships in Empire Records, I think, carry over to this movie. And obviously, I wanted something that was kind of unique and something that I don't think that you guys would pick So Empire Records is my recommendation if you like Mean Streets.
I mean, that's a great recommendation, and you're right, because I also have never seen that film, but it's on the list now, so I'm excited that you recommended
It's also
it.
on my list now. Yeah.
What about you, Mike? What do you recommend in addition to Mean Streets?
Yeah, so I really struggle with this, and I am going to make a recommendation that I think is close to being a violation of our no films that are going to be on the podcast rule. And so as my recommendation, in addition to Mean Streets, I would like to recommend the 1972 Francis Ford Coppola film, The Godfather. The Godfather and Mean Streets they're kind of, they're very thematically, and I think from a subject matter perspective, linked with one another. And I would describe it succinctly as this. They're kind of two sides of one coin in two different ways. So one, in terms of what their subject matter is, Mean Streets is a story about working class characters, and The Godfather is a story about management, right? So in Mean Streets, we see a depiction of what it's like to be low level. In The Godfather, we see a depiction, I think, equally realistic of what it is like to be in management. And likewise, I think in Mean Streets, we see what it was like to be a low-level mobster during the era where the Italian mob was kind of falling from power and prominence. Whereas in The Godfather, we see the mob of the late 40s into the mid-50s when the mafia was at its pinnacle of power in American culture and American life. Likewise, while as Mike and Andrew both described, Mean Streets is a movie that's not really about the story. It's a very meandering, very Shaggy Dog kind of story. The Godfather is a movie that is about the story. Everything happens for a reason. It is a very long movie, but it's very tightly focused, and everything that happens matters a lot. And so I think these films work really well together. And it's kind of nice that they came out right around the same time as well. So they share a lot of I think a lot of visual styling and a lot of other things, and they're both great. And if you watch The Godfather Part 1, you'll be ready to watch The Godfather Part 2 when we eventually roll it for this podcast. So that is my recommendation for today.
I mean, listen, I think that was a great recommendation. So I was not upset about it at all. I think that was a great justification, and it's obviously one of the greatest films of all time, although I have not seen it in totality. So I'm waiting until we roll The Godfather Part 2, but definitely on the list. My recommendation is the 1992 crime drama film Bad Lieutenant, directed by Abel Ferrara and starring Harvey Keitel. So in this film, Keitel plays an extremely corrupt NYPD cop who is reckoning with matters of faith very similar to the character of Charlie in Mean Streets. But this is an incredibly bleak film. It is unflinching. It is raw. Keitel plays an extremely unlikable character. He is corrupt. He is an addict. He is an abuser. But the central case that he investigates in this film is the rape of a nun. And one of the major themes in the film is this tension between sin and salvation, and Keitel's character wondering whether or not he is beyond redemption. Another reason why I recommend it, in addition to Mean Streets, is because there's also that thematic continuity. So both of these films are dealing with Catholic guilt and redemption and personal responsibility, but they handle them in different ways. Because Mean Streets obviously was 20 years before Bad Lieutenant, and so Keitel plays a younger character, and there's a lot of youthful conflict, but Bad Lieutenant is very stripped down compared to that. And you see Keitel's character dealing with this unfiltered anguish in the midst of his spiritual collapse. And just like Mean Streets, it's a great New York City film. Both of these films really make New York City into a character, for lack of a less annoying term, and you can tell that the stories are deeply rooted in the geography and the psychology of New York City specifically. So although the tone and visuals are darker than in Mean Streets, I do think it makes a great counterpart to that film, great companion, and so that is my recommendation, Bad Lieutenant.
It's a great recommendation. Thanks for making it.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. And with that, it's time to go to our final segment, rolling for next week's film. It's Mike's turn this week to roll. Mike, what are you looking forward to? What do you want to roll?
Do you even need to ask?
I need to ask.
Silver Linings Playbook. All right. I'm going to roll those dice. We have rolled 17, which is Raging Bull. Another Marty Scorsese banger. Let's go.
Wow.
Raging Bull is a 1980 American biographical sports drama film directed by Martin Scorsese. The film is an adaptation of former middleweight boxing champion Jake LaMotta's 1970 memoir, Raging Bull, My Story. It follows the career of LaMotta, played by De Niro, his rise and fall in professional boxing, and his turbulent personal life beset by rage and jealousy. Much like Mean Streets, this is supposed to be an all-timer. So we're getting back-to-back all-timer De Niro films on the podcast, which is pretty exciting.
That is incredibly exciting. I'm really looking forward to that.
Me too. I'm pumped.
And with that, it's time to close this incredibly long episode of Our Hero De Niro out. First of all, I want to thank our guest, Andrew, for being here and contributing so much to the Mean Streets discourse.
Thanks for being here, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. I had a really great time.
I'd also like to thank Caroline, a wife of the pod, friend of the pod, for creating our lovely podcast artwork. Please follow Mike and I on Letterboxd. I'm Mike back at you. He's Mike the Fab. And email us with basically anything you want at ourherodeniro@gmail.com, and we will happily read it and probably respond to it on air. We'll be back at you next week with an episode on another Marty Scorsese film, Raging Bull.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Thanks, Andrew.